We begin today with the continued fallout from the latest mass shooting in America at a high school in Winder, Georgia. On Wednesday morning, 14-year-old Colt Gray reportedly shot and killed 2 teachers and 2 students at Appalachia High School and injured 9 others with an AR-style rifle. Gray now faces numerous charges, including murder, and will be tried as an adult. The teenager's father, Colin Gray, also faces charges in connection to the shooting. With the new school year underway, the shooting naturally leaves many parents uneasy and asking questions about the state of school security in Kentucky. 2019's School Safety and Resiliency Act holds Kentucky schools to a higher standard when it comes to who can even access the building, requiring layers of locked doors and having a defined plan for if the worst ever happened. An annual inspection report found more than 99% of Kentucky's 1,325 schools are meeting the law's requirements. In some cases, only one school may not have met a requirement, such as electronically controlling the main entrance. The weakest area of compliance, 13 schools that didn't close and lock their classrooms during the day. The law's original sponsor, Senator Max Wise, talked to me about the thinking behind the approach.
We could look at anything and say, I would rather have a good system in place and a good security apparatus that may keep someone that wanting to do something that they know, hey, this school's protected. You know, this school has got a school police department. This school has got a team approach that's already in place. You know, we didn't have that before Senate Bill 1 of 2019.
The report also found a 28% increase from last year in school resource officers to 790 across the state. This year, Wise passed a bill for districts to optionally hire retired police or ex-military guardians as a stopgap starting next year. So, gentlemen, I'll start this conversation posing to you all the same question that I posed to Senator Wise, which is, do we know that our law is effectively working, or in the past 5 years have we just been lucky?
Well, if I may, first of all, I'm 33rd District in Louisville.
Oh, excuse me?
That's no problem. Let me weigh into that a little bit. You know, I think it's going to take a combination of approaches to deal with this, because it's a complex issue, societally based, the proliferation of guns. Guns that are made for wartime, accessibility to that, an open society, etc. Mental health gets involved into this, obviously, with respect to that. So there's not one thing I think is going to deal with this effectively. I think we're going to have to use a combination of things. I don't think we're doing enough.
Senator McDaniel?
You know, I fundamentally think that the Kentucky General Assembly has taken dramatic steps. You'll remember the shooting down in Marshall County several years ago, and the call to action that came about is part of that. And you'll find that we're now funding school resource officers in every district, many of whom are putting them in each building or each campus. We talk about the hardening of the schools to make it more difficult for people to get inside, and the funding that we've put behind that, and also in counselors in each school to try to help children who are dealing with issues, and some may be much more minor and some much more severe, to try to address those. So there's a variety of factors, as Senator Neal references, you know, be they environmental, at home, or be they any number of things that could be contributing to this, in places where we could address them. To get to your original question, I think that we have to know that we probably are being effective, but unfortunately the nature of the problem is such that when you are playing defense in a good manner, you don't always know exactly how effective you are. But I can say that we are applying every resource legally and financially to try and help people, try and help them physically, try to help them mentally, and to make sure that when kids go to school they worry about learning and nothing else.
And yet, and I agree, I think we've taken some steps that I think are very important, but and yet we don't do something that's very common sense oriented and very basic, like the Baby Dre Act, which has been offered several times, myself offering it as well, where parents or whoever is an adult in the house has a duty and responsibility to secure firearms, very basic type of thing. But not only that, it had some penalties associated with it to encourage that. For if they fail to do that, they perhaps would be subject to misdemeanor. But if someone was injured or killed as a result of that access to that firearm, it become a Class D felony. So what I'm saying is, we have to have people. We're going to have all these guns in society, and believe me, we got a bunch of them. We're going to have to do those things and pass laws that also require and inspire personal responsibility.
Now, you bring up that legislation. In the past, the word gun control has often been referred to, at least to me, as something of a dirty word in Frankfort. It's not something that's discussed very often or doesn't go very far in terms of the legislative process. Just this past year, a Republican senator, one of your colleagues, Whitney Westerfield, sponsored the car bill, would have been a red flag type of law. Is there a way to have a conversation in a committee, in whatever step of the process beyond what we're seeing right now?
Well, it's just, if I may, we can have a conversation. We do have conversations. We talk. Myself and Senator McDaniel, we have a easy, free-flowing exchange of ideas routinely. But the fact of the matter is that it's more complicated in terms of passing policy and legislation, and there's also the national scene and what's being pushed in that. The Supreme Court rulings as they relate and are interpreted by various other individuals, and then you have activists that are out there that don't want you to touch those guns. So anything they think that touches something on those guns, and I'm still trying to figure all that out, you're going to get that pushback. So I think all of these things and other factors are involved.
Do you see some sort of middle ground, Senator McDaniel, on the argument between something that is constitutional in an approach to what's being proposed here versus something that's common sense versus constitutional?
Well, sure. You know, I think that common sense prevails at the individual level. I mean, Senator Neal talks about it very eloquently there. The idea that if you own a firearm, you're responsible. It's inherent that you should responsibly own that firearm. That it should be secured appropriately. That you shouldn't be allowing young people around them. That you should understand how to utilize them, and that's absolutely critical. Legislatively, obviously, there are certain rights that are contained in the United States Constitution, and much like the freedom of the press and the right to free speech, the right to bear arms exists there as well. And if people want to modify that, that is a federal issue to be addressed, not necessarily a state level issue. We need to do what we can inside the confines of the construct that we have to make sure that our schools are safe. And of course, these conversations will go on, trying to make sure that we do that. I think ultimately we share the same goal, but we can't disregard some of the basic rights that are enshrined to people as we go about those.
And I'm going to let you have the last word on that. But